about an important concept, and it was inspired, if that's the right word. It was certainly awoken within me after what happened in Boulder on Sunday. I spoke about it yesterday, getting a little hate out there. I love the haters who reveal who they are, so we know who they are, and they tend to be pretty obvious when you see them online, because they're the ones who go to the ad hominem attacks. They rant and rave and make a lot of noise, and it's important to know where the enemies are. So along those lines, I've talked to quite a few people. I'm here in Denver, Colorado, have kids who go to University of Colorado Boulder. And so we're, directly impacted by the terrorist attack that happened there on Sunday. Thank God everybody's alive and well in my camp here. But I've talked to a lot of people who feel scared. They feel, victimized, and rightly so. They have been. When a shooter goes into the DC museum and shoots innocent human beings because they happen to be Israeli or Jewish, when they attack a peaceful walk in solidarity of hostages that are still in the hell of Gaza, and they're attacked by Molotov cocktails, right? They're, by definition, they've been victimized. And it's real easy to feel helpless and hopeless in those situations. Obviously, there are so many other examples of being victimized. It can be all kinds of personal things. I coach and counsel and guide people all day, every day, and I've seen it all. I've heard it all. There's domestic abuse and violence. There's sexual abuse. There's, just 1,000 things. I don't have to tell you all of the ways that we can be victimized, and legitimately we are victimized. And I start there, right? The most important thing to do is to be honest with what you're dealing with, what you're feeling, and just honor that, right? Not to make it go away, not to brush it under the rug. That is the worst thing we can do. I've seen it in my own life. I saw the consequences of it when my grandmother killed herself and my father went back to, I'm fine, right? Everything's fine. And he went back there prematurely. I think you can get back to a place of fine. Frankly, who the hell wants to get back to fine? But you can get to fine as a starting point if you're willing to face it, right? You gotta name it to tame it. You gotta face it and embrace it, whatever it is, no matter how dark and difficult it might be. Otherwise, it goes underground and it starts to erode our sense of security and certainty and confidence. And so the only way that you can move through this is to face it and to go into it. I call it avoidance, a void dance, a dance around the void. There's a void at the center of your life when you've been victimized. Fill in the blank of how that has happened. And you just end up spending your life dancing around and around and around the void. And you have to do a lot more dancing, and to find a lot more dancing partners, and to take a lot of things to keep you from falling in that void. But it's never enough, because eventually you fall in. And it's terrifying to live in that space of dancing around the void and not knowing what to do with it, not knowing how to face it. And it's exhausting. And so when I'm coaching, when I'm counseling people, the starting point is to face it. And then you go into it and you embrace it and you work through it. Now, here's what I want to focus on today, because there's 1,000 things that I do in my own life and things I offer other people. And the starting point for me after that is to think about the concept from a teacher of mine. So I quote Viktor Frankl a lot. If you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning, you need to read this book. If you feel like you have been victimized, this is the book for you. This isn't even just me saying it. This was ranked as, I think, top 10 most important books of the 20th century. Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, and he knows from darkness. He went through darkness that's unimaginable. And yet he came out the other side of it with hope, with purpose. He's the one I quoted in my very controversial video yesterday, that there are only two races, as he saw it, coming out of the Holocaust: the decent and the indecent. And He never lost his hope. He never lost his ability to survive. And that's what I want to talk about, because one of his students, her name is Dr. Edith Eager, and thank God she's alive and well. I know she's well into her 90s. She's a psychiatrist. She's a logotherapist like me. She was a contemporary, a little bit younger than Dr. Frankl, but became his student. And I don't know if she quotes him around this, but she stands on her own right as a powerful force in this lifetime. Anyways, in one of Dr. Eager's books, she has two amazing books, The Choice and The Gift. I think The Gift is a little more textbooky and The Choice is a little more narrative. It's been a while since I've read them, but I do remember in The Choice, I think it's in The Choice, that she has a profound paradigm shifting worldview. If you can adopt this, you have everything you need to move through whatever victimization, whatever you've experienced, no matter how painful, tragic, dark it might be. And she says this out of the Holocaust. She says, the difference between being a victim and being victimized is that victimization happens to all of us. We become victims, and that's a period of time. And like I said, you gotta honor it, you gotta face it, you gotta work through it. But then at some point, some of us take up residency in the victimhood. That's why it's called the victimhood, because we take up residency there. We make that our address. It starts to define us in 1,000 different ways. And that's a dangerous place to live, because if we take up residence in the victimhood, it becomes who we are. It becomes our identity. Like with terrorism that happened in Boulder or in DC a couple of weeks ago, it's so easy and understandable to let those things chip away at our sense of being, our sense of safety and security. And we start to define ourselves by that insecurity, by that fear. And we take up residence there. However, there's another way, there's a better way. And she says it's the difference between being a victim and living in the victimhood and becoming a survivor, right? And a victim ultimately says, why me? And I don't deny somebody the right to say, why me? I don't begrudge them. I understand it. I did it after my father's suicide. I said, why me? 1,000 different times in 1,000 different ways. It took me the better part of a decade to really stop working, to stop saying why me and focusing on that, and to move to the next phase or a better place. And that is to become a survivor. And what she said was, victims say, why me? And the problem with why me is, first of all, it's unanswerable, right? Why did this act of terror happen to me personally if it happened to you? Why did this abuse happen? Why did a bad thing happen to a good person? The loss of a loved one? There's 1,000 things. Why me is unanswerable. It makes you powerless. There is no definitive thing that you can ever receive. People would ask me when I was a rabbi all the time, right? Why do bad things happen to good people? The fancy word theodicy. Any clergy person who pretends that he or she has the answer is lying. They don't know, or they're just trying to comfort you with platitudes. But I would argue that platitudes don't comfort us, not really, not for long. We can't answer why me. Doesn't mean we don't ask the question, but at some point we need to really face the facts that we'll never answer it. And it leaves us powerless. It leaves us hopeless. It leaves us in a place of the victimhood and victimized. However, there's a next step, and she says it's to become a survivor. Whereas a victim says, why me? A survivor says, what now? Now what? Now what is definitive, right? It's answerable. Now what? Now what do I do that my loved one is dead? Well, I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to have to take these concrete steps. Why me? After the atrocity of what happened here in Boulder, why me? I don't know. Why me? If I was a victim, I wasn't a victim, or a bystander, or a Jew. I'm Israeli. Why me? That's not the Israeli way for sure. It's not the Jewish way for sure. It's not the survivor's way for sure. Because now what can I do? Well, using that example, since I just like stirring the pot and all the haters get to hate some more. The Israeli spirit, the Jewish spirit, what has kept us alive is that we are survivors. We always say, now what? Now what can I do to learn from that attack? I can arm myself. I can learn how to use a firearm. I can take Krav Maga, the Israeli defense system. I can be more vigilant next time. I can engage the authorities, although they didn't do shit until after the fact. I can, you figure it out, right? But that's the point. You can figure it out. There is always something to do on the other side of being victimized if we're a survivor. There's something that we can learn from this. Viktor Frankl said, it is our duty to transform tragedy into triumph. And we don't just do that with platitudes and with feelings and ideas. We do that by translating what we have learned through the experience, as devastating as it might be, into a possibility. Hey, for all you haters out there, that's why we have the state of Israel, because out of the atrocity of the annihilation of the Jewish people, my people of survivors, said, now what? And that's when never again became a reality of, then we need a homeland of our own. And we returned there. And by the way, Jews never left there. So we would have a safe haven, so that never again really was never again. And so out of tragedy, we transformed it into triumph. Coming back to the individual, because that's what this is about. Because the men that I coached today, the women that I coached today, we're dealing with real life suffering, real life victimization. And the work that we did in our coaching was, now what? And 1,000 different answers for them. I can't tell people what their now what is, but I help them find the language, give them the space, stand by their side. And let me tell you, there is nothing more powerful in this lifetime than to watch somebody who's been victimized and gone through the victimhood to decide to move to a new neighborhood, to move to this place of being a survivor. I call it being a victor, Viktor, from victim to victor, because this man out of the Holocaust, and Edith Eager, having lost everything, decided there is meaning, there is purpose in this darkness. I am going to find it, or God help me die trying. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to carry it out into the world as an act of love, as a gift to others, as a way to transform that tragedy into triumph. And most of all, to not allow the terrorists to do what they set out to do, to terrorize. I won't participate in that. I won't allow myself to wallow in it. I won't sit around anymore and ask, why me? I will do the only thing that I can do, the thing that I have to do to be a survivor, to be a victor, is to ask the question, now what? And to not stop until I answer it and live it out in 1,000 different ways. So whatever you're going through, and yes, to the Jews in this country, and to Israelis around the world right now, and to people who are being harmed. And yes, my heart breaks for Palestinians. I'm not going down this path, but my heart breaks for them. And that's why we have to eradicate Hamas, because they deserve an opportunity to survive. And that's the only way they're going to survive, is if we eradicate the evil in their midst that's doing the harming of them. So whatever you're going to, sorry, couldn't resist. I've just been getting hammered by all the hate on YouTube specifically. I don't know why YouTube, but again, doesn't faze me, doesn't affect me, because I am a survivor. I am a victor, just like so many of you, just like the Jewish people and the people of the state of Israel, to transform tragedy into triumph by taking back our power, never giving it away, never again, by asking and answering the question, now what? And you can become a victor as well. I'll see you in the next video.